Welcome to CPG Brand Builders. I'm Braden Douglas, and today we are with Morgan Kingdon. And let me read her bio because it is awesome. So Morgan is the Director of Marketing at Program Brands, where she leads the marketing team for the brands Protein Candy and Pulp and Press. And she's known for turning big ideas into breakthroughs with equal parts strategic savvy and creative spark. She's led the launch of campaigns that marry consumer insight with unforgettable creative, like taking Protein Candy from zero to nationwide success. And we're going to talk about that. With a career spanning media, tech, and CPG, Morgan brings the kind of forward-thinking leadership and executional excellence that makes brands stand out on shelf and, more importantly, in the heart of consumers. So, Morgan, welcome to CPG Brand Builders.
So happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Well, give us an idea of your background, just how you got into marketing. Just give us that context.
Yeah. So, I've loved CPG as long as I can remember, honestly, going back even to being a little girl. Walking through the grocery store was quite literally one of my favorite hobbies. My family would pile in the van and I would go scouring all the coolest stuff at the grocery store. Back then it was Dunkaroos, to be totally honest.
Yeah.
But eventually that did transition into a love for better for you products. I thought it was so cool that these brands were starting to really meld healthy food that my parents would force me to eat with something that could be really fun, tasty. And then I went to school for both music and business. So there was a bit of a natural, I guess, inclination towards entertainment and marketing. So my first job out of university was actually in influencer marketing at a startup called Community Canada, which ended up being acquired by Chorus Entertainment, which is one of the largest broadcasters in Canada. So I worked across a ton of industries when I was there, really at the time when we were transitioning from bloggers and like your foodie bloggers, into YouTubers and eventually into Instagram. And so introducing brands that were Fortune 500 companies to the concept of influencer marketing and what it could do for their brand and how it could help them tell stories that were really natural. But I always loved CPG, worked with tons of CPG brands then. So then I moved over to marketing tech at Sampler, which helped with digital sampling for CPG brands, and eventually found my way to Protein Candy and Pulp and Press. So was super inspired and excited about the mission behind both of the brands. So after having worked with hundreds of CPG marketers and brand leaders over the years, it was the right time to come and build some really incredible brands and work with a great team. So awesome. I'm excited to be where I'm at.
Yeah, that's really cool. You were on the very front end of influencer marketing and even digital sampling like that. Those are great. And I still remember the days when you had to convince people that influencers were important, and they were cheap back then. They're expensive now. Influencers are getting a lot more savvy with management and everything else. It wasn't like the old days where you'd send them just product and they would go riff on it and things. So it's, wow, that's awesome. Well, tell us a little bit about Protein Candy and Pulp and Press and just those two brands that you're managing right now, because they're quite different, two different categories, two cool brands. But give us an idea of Protein Candy and then Pulp and Press.
Yeah, so the idea is really to have disruptive brands that are better for you, that we manage. So Protein Candy, it's the leading at this point. Like you said, we started from zero when I joined to now being the leading candy with protein in North America. The candy has 14 grams of protein per bag. It's from a whey protein isolate too, which is really important for anyone who's kind of a nutrition nerd out there. You might know that actually a normal gummy candy would have, some protein in it technically from the gelatin and collagen that comes from that. But what you need if you're looking to build muscle is really a whey protein isolate. So that's what Protein Candy has, but it's not just going to tell you it will taste like a brownie or a pretzel or something like that, like some of the protein bars we love, but it's actually a candy first. So
just describe it. If nobody has, because it's a brand new product, fantastic. It's hitting that trend of high protein, but the way that I would describe it, and maybe I'm totally wrong, is it's like Starburst kind of ish, and then it has protein in it, right? Is that kind of what people would imagine it as?
Yeah, I think it looks like a Starburst. We designed it so that it feels really fun, candy first. I mean, candy's so experiential too. You don't want an ugly looking candy. We are using natural flavors and colors, but it will look like a Starburst a little bit. And then it has this nice, like gummy chew. It is a really unique texture in the candy space, but what people love about it is it still has that nostalgic bite without sticking to your teeth, and then you're not picking it out all day. So, yeah, it's a really fun candy experience, which is great.
Yeah, no, which is awesome. And then Pulp and Press, totally different than protein candy. Just give people an idea of what that brand is.
Yeah, Pulp and Press, it's a leading cold pressed juice drink brand. It's really a pioneering brand in the cold pressed space in North America. We were one of the first brands over a decade ago now to start delivering cleanses directly to your house. So it's grown tremendously since then. We're distributed across North America. It's always organic, and it's truly the only juice that will rival the freshness of what you can make on your counter. But you also have the nutritionist backed recipes that come behind it. And you're not just creating a mess in the kitchen. So I personally love it, especially as a runner myself. Having a beet juice after a run is great practice, but you don't want to juice it yourself. So cold pressed juice is great for that. Pulp and Press has now evolved into a few different categories too. So we have the wellness shots, juices, and smoothies.
Yeah, and it's I will say Pulp and Press from a juice, and I drink a lot of different cold pressed juices. It is so good. Like Hulk for me, the green, I'm like, it is so good. Every time I find it, I'm like, great, here it is. And how many SKUs in both, in protein candy and in Pulp and Press? Like how many SKUs kind of total that you're working with in both brands?
It's a great quiz question. It would be, we've got 4 for protein candy, so 4 core SKUs. Something new is going to be launching very soon, which we're really excited about that new SKU. So that'll 5 for a limited time. And then on the Pulp and Press side, there would be 14. 14 or 18 between all of the categories, but
Very cool.
you fact check me on that later.
That's right. No, that's awesome. I think it just gives us good context of, okay, here's what's happening. So then let's talk about strategy. So you've got protein candy, which is an upstart, brand new innovation. You've got your core SKUs that you have, and then you're going to be innovating on that. And then you have Pulp and Press on the cold pressed juice side, totally different category. The innovation, you've already gotten into what we call kind of brand extensions into new categories. So what have you learned about product strategy as you think about these two brands? And if a marketer is listening to this right now and they're seeing, well, what can they learn? Like, what have you learned kind of from this and just innovation strategy alone?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest lessons for me has really been that, I mean, innovation's not just about the flavor or packaging. That is really important, but ultimately it's about having a real tension that the consumer has. I think as much as I want to take full credit and give my team full credit for the marketing on protein candy and that driving its success, really what happened was our founders saw that consumers, they're snacking on candy for taste, and then protein bars for function that claim to taste like dessert, but really don't. And they hated having to choose between the two. Consumers hate choosing between the two. So for us, it was a pain point that they saw themselves. That was a real pain point in the market and definitely aligned with the market trends, frankly, quite perfectly. And ultimately, that's the thing. If products don't fit that consumer tension, they're not going to break through the way that they could otherwise, no matter how much great branding you put behind it and great storytelling. The product itself is of core importance as long as it's a fit for the consumer as well.
Amen to that. I think that the one thing is that you have to have a great product if you don't. But so you use the term consumer tension. So that's a great term. Now, what exactly does that mean to you? Like if I'm trying to think about my own strategies and brands and different things, it's What kind of tension should I be looking for, or should a marketer be looking for to maybe create that next kind of wave?
Yeah, great question. I'll pause on it for a second.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think ultimately it's also looking and doing a lot of having a lot of conversations with a diverse group of people within what you think your set would be. So, I think looking at protein candy again, just keeping the example fresh, it's a great example where the founder really did have this obsession himself.
Yeah.
So it is a great place to start, right? If you're starting a brand from scratch and you've got this annoyance, in our case, it was I'm eating better for you candies, but I'm also downing a protein shake. There's got to be a better way. If that comes to mind, that's a great example versus going to the grocery store and going, what's missing protein here? I mean, at this point, a consumer is going to sniff that out a mile away. Is just someone injecting protein into a product that probably
Yeah.
doesn't need protein. But yeah, there's got to be a better way is a good question. If you hear that over and over again from consumers in your target market, then you got something.
So I think you hit on something that I really believe marketers need to know is that you have to really be in the lives of consumers, like in the category, like hanging out with them, seeing what they enjoy, what is going on. And so even the founder of Protein Candy is saying, "Hey, they're in it. He's wanting to do it." And so he sees a need and he fulfills that need. But there's oftentimes I find that marketers, we get trapped behind our desk. You get trapped behind just data and you're not out in the community. You're not with your consumers. You kind of start losing touch and the distance between you and your consumers becomes too wide. And then it just becomes about a transaction of just trying to extrapolate money or whatever from them. But I think you really do have to get to know the segments, like the people that like the consumers are actually eating it and consuming it and the lifestyle that they want that your product is helping them to achieve.
Absolutely. I mean, marketers are really busy nowadays. So it can be hard to get out from behind your desk, but you have to do it. So.
Yeah, no, it's true. Now, I guess here's the question. How do you do that? How do you get out behind, like what kind of stuff would you do or would you even want to do a lot more of?
Well, I'll say one of the things that has really impressed me about there's someone on my team that I think does a really great job of this. So I'll credit them. But quite literally, just going to the grocery store and watching what people do. It being a marketer doesn't mean you have to be an extrovert, but being able to just take a deep breath and go and ask some stranger, frankly, oh, that's interesting. Why did you pick that? Pick the right person.
Yeah.
Don't bother someone when they're on a wild grocery run, but that can be a really great way of doing it. Trade shows can also be a good spot, or even just smaller events, right? If you're thinking, I want to make this product for runners, go to a running show, go to a race, go talk to friends and family who are runners, ask them to introduce you to people who are as well, who share the same hobby, same lifestyle, and just have a few chats here and there. But
Yeah.
there's so many ways. You just have to put yourself out there.
You know what? I love that. I think that the best marketers that I know are people watchers and it's even for me, a grocery store visit takes double the amount of time that a normal person would shop for sure. 100%. And I end up buying stuff that I just think looks cool and that has a unique strategy and I'll just buy it. And my wife will be like, why do you do that? And I'm like, I thought it was really cool. I just want to I love what they're doing. I just want to support them. And she's like, but you don't even like that. And I'm like, I know, but I just think it's really awesome. So, no, that's great. Now, what about consumer behaviors? We talked about consumers. Like what kind of changes in consumer behavior are you seeing that a marketer should, just be aware of and take a look at?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, there's been such a huge shift post pandemic. I think we all feel it as consumers ourselves, but I don't always see it reflected in strategies. I think most strong marketers have definitely caught on, but it's that we need to shift to omni-channel. Consumers aren't just looking for a product, they're also looking for the brand, yes, but they're looking for ease of purchase. So you see a lot of the kind of darlings of D2C, like I think of AG1 launching in Costco.
Mm.
That is a direct response to consumer behavior saying, hey, we're back in store. We want to be able to discover products there as well. Whereas in a pandemic era, we were looking for products online, and certainly we still expect to discover them there on TikTok Shop, on Instagram, but then we need to also just find them like you did on your grocery shop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is, I would say that we're seeing in a lot of the clients that we work with, the honeymoon of online shopping is definitely over. And, consumers now are going back into retail because that's actually where they discover a lot too. So they might discover it a little bit in influencers and stuff, but we do find that consumers still are making that discovery of new products or even trying things at grocery, at mass, at retail and stuff too. So no, that's really good. Now, what about talking about retail? I would say if you're in CPG, how to work with retailers, how to get shelf presence, how to do it. Like what are kind of lessons that you've learned and strategies that's another marketer might take for their own brands?
Yeah, I think really retailers are your VIPs. So, especially when you're starting a new brand, if we didn't have some of the key retailers that we did on board and the relationships that we did with them for protein candy right off the top, there's no way we would be where we are in the timing that we needed to be. They're the gatekeepers of the consumer. And really, the more that marketing can arm the sales team, especially at early stages of the brand, with tools, insights, stories, get them excited and help get the retailer genuinely bought in and understanding the vision of where you see the product going, the better the foundation is going to be for further growth. So I think that's the main thing. You really have to invest in the relationship you have with your sales team so that they can invest in the relationship with the retailer.
Yeah, I would say that, yeah, the retailer piece and even trade spend, we're seeing the average trade spend now being 10 to 15% sometimes of the top line. And because having those deals, having that prominent shelf space, end caps, different things, I think it's so important. Incremental displays, like figuring out ways of really working with a retailer in doing that. Now, what are your thoughts on? Do you think it's better to work with one retailer and go really deep and really figuring that out with them, or going to many and being able to spread out on a wider geography? Like, what are your thoughts on going deep or wide with your distribution strategy?
It's a great question. I mean, it depends on the category, would be my answer. For candy, for example, we needed to be as many places as possible because a candy craving is going to strike whether you're at the grocery store or whether you're at a gas station. It does not matter.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're looking at cold pressed juice, you could focus on maybe your independent natural food stores. And also, it requires a little bit more education. Why is your cold pressed juice so different, so much more special? And you really want to build the relationship with the retailer at an even deeper level. So if you are balancing that trade-off, I think you have to look at what the product is itself and how your consumers might be shopping and what's important to them at point of sale to make that decision, and build the strategy from there.
You know what? I think that's a really good point on the impulse buy means probably a lot wider, distribution components where maybe habit forming products like cold pressed juice, where you're getting into a habit, you're kind of developing that, going a little bit deeper within that. I can see that being, yeah, that's great advice. That's good. I like that. Now, what about, okay, now we're going to have, let's say we've got distribution. We got a great product. It's at the right price. It's positioned well. We've got the fundamentals of the strategy set, and now we get to promote it. And so what are those campaigns or launches or initiatives that you've been kind of most proud of, or that we can kind of learn from of what makes a really good promotional strategy to start to really engage consumers?
Yeah, I am incredibly proud of the protein candy launch. I mean, it's hard not to be. It was high stakes for the business. We knew we needed to go out and be bold. And the key thing there too was staying really hyper focused. We spent a lot of time up front figuring out what is the brand voice that we want to come across all of the assets. I mean, we're also a small team, so we can't just be testing a million different assets. And that's also confusing for the customer, for the consumer, if they're trying to quickly identify you in all these different places. So we aim to be big, bold, unmissable. So big meant being out of home on big billboards. We had a great partner that also did a truck wrap and got really creative with having it go outside of some of the locations where we knew we would be in store that maybe didn't have a billboard available. But everything we did had this tongue-in-cheek, bold energy to it. So it really did make it easy for consumers to latch on to, oh, this is what protein candy is. And it was very intentional. We knew in the space protein has been a bit broy, a little dark brooding and black and gold, black and silver. So coming out there with a bright pink billboard with a fun bag of candy, tongue-in-cheek copy, but singular, consistent stories was really helpful in breaking through and making our budget go further too.
Yeah, absolutely. So here's a great thing. Did you have, when you're, take us a little bit on that insight of what's happening, because you're taking a lot of time at the beginning. You're right, this kind of broy kind of culture, because this is protein, this is what that consumer segment, and you're saying, hey, we're gonna do a different type of strategy. Was there any conflict or decisions on, is this the right thing? Should we do this? Because tongue in cheek is it's sometimes hard to pull off as a brand voice. But maybe give us an idea of what was that like on a strategy side.
Yeah, I mean, we were very fortunate where our co-founders both understood the importance of differentiating ourselves that way. So that did make that part of my job a little easier, where I think people will say there's the devil's in the details. You're looking for, how does this really come to life? That's where it does become a bit more challenging. I found we had a great copywriter that we brought on board for the project. That made a world of a difference, investing in the people who were going to be able to keep that consistent brand voice and really keep iterating until we landed on something. But we had to do that work and have, frankly, tens of revisions in order to get there, because even though we all agreed bold means something different to everyone else. So
yes,
yeah, just seeing it in practice was super important.
And I would say that at the very beginning, and this is for all the marketers out there as well, is build in enough time so that you can have these iterations and different stuff, because the pressure on you to be able to execute, and if you have to go through iterations, it is a nightmare. And I've done this many times. So it sounds like you did build in enough time to be able to have those iterations, to be able to see that. Was that the case, or did you feel like you were still crunched?
Still a little crunched. I think it is tricky to, especially when you're a marketer who potentially you've been working a lot on e-com and this is your first billboard. And it might even be the company's first billboard, right? It might be leadership's first time working on it. So they're thinking they can make changes up until the last minute, which is absolutely fine when you're doing, of course, a Facebook ad. But there really is a big mentality shift, which I think the team managed extremely well. But regardless, if you're used to that fast turnaround, which we all are, I think at this point as marketers, you just have to make sure that if you're doing a big brand moment, you're not looking at your billboard later going, oh, I wish we had really thought a little harder about that.
Oh man, you know what, marketers, we never have enough time. We never have enough money. And we wish we could keep, always go back. I think marketers are like the most perfectionists, I think, in organizations. Mm-hmm. It's almost like I think we're actually cruel to ourselves sometimes of thinking we can, and that's why you just keep doing the next one, you get better and better and better. So, no, that's fantastic. Okay. So you've got a great launch, protein candy. Awesome. What about lessons in your career where it didn't go well? Maybe things that are because we've all done it. We've all had these different kind of mistakes or anything that's happened that you have learned from that other marketers can learn from your experience.
Yeah, I mean, one of the biggest learning moments in my career, I would say, and working at effectively an agency that's just churning out marketing strategies really does train you well because having a great idea doesn't mean it's a great marketing campaign. You might love it and have a lot of heart for it. The whole team might as well. But to your point, we're stretched for resources, stretched for time. And so it, in the case I'm thinking of really early on, my team had a great concept. We were excited to share. We wanted to dive in and make sure everyone could really see the vision. We spent quite a bit of time trying to articulate what a game changer this would be for the brand. And by the time we came up for air, we realized the business direction had shifted, even just slightly. Not a huge shift, but what we had been working on because we were so heads down as a marketing team, just wasn't applicable anymore to what was needed for the brand. And so, you know, time wasted is time wasted. It'll
Yeah.
happen. But that was a big learning lesson because it also doesn't feel good for the team that's been hustling to.
So in that, because I've actually heard that from other people as well, that you're working on this, you think it's a great idea, you're gonna, by the time you execute it, the market has kind of moved or the business has shifted a bit, and so it just kind of doesn't get the results that you want. What would you have done differently?
Yeah, I think in our case, a lot of the shifts were internal. So for us, it would have been quick check-ins with teams like ops, who I think marketing can sometimes forget. They've got some really, really important insights into your business. Like if you don't have that product is maybe at risk of you're selling out faster than you thought you were, or something along those lines, you need to know that so you're not pinning your entire marketing campaign around it. So talking to ops, talking to your leadership team, even if it's not fully baked and perfect, just to make sure that as you're moving, you can do those little micro pivots and you don't have to do a whole 180 on your campaign right at the finish line.
Yeah, you know what, that I can't tell you how awesome that advice is, to be cross-functionally aware earlier on in the process. And I do think that for me, I tell different people that marketing is not isolated. Marketing kind of touches every function from sales to ops to finance, and you can't just be isolated where you're just kind of talking with the president or whatever it is. You have to really be communicating. And I think you're right. It doesn't have to be perfect at the beginning. It might just be like, hey, we're thinking about this. What are your thoughts? Getting that kind of initial feedback, not having this big, huge deck and a formal presentation, but maybe it's just saying, hey, Frank, can I just kind of show you this for a second? What do you think about that? Just with your experience. But I think you're absolutely right. Like hitting on that cross-functional input early on, or even, either ownership or president alignment early on can sometimes be a huge game changer, because they can pop your balloon down the line, and then you've wasted a lot of time and effort and then put more stress on your team.
Absolutely.
So, wow, that's awesome. Okay. So you have worked in both emerging brands. So, Protein Candy right now is in the very early stages from startup. Now you're moving through it rapidly growth. Within that, you've also worked on more established brands. So what do you see as differences between working on an emerging brand, startup kind of brand that's introduced into the market, and a little bit more of an established brand? And what do you see those, because you kind of work in those two worlds, which is quite different from a lot of people.
Yeah, and I think ultimately the practices, no matter where the brand is at, whether it's established or emerging, they're very similar. The brand management principles should be very much the same. But what happens is, I think with emerging brands, there's a lot of overemphasizing on what makes the product great, which obviously matters. Thinking back to Protein Candy, if there wasn't this obsession at the beginning to make sure this product was perfect and really thoughtful, and not only had 14 grams of protein but also had the right amount of fiber, we wouldn't be as successful as we are. But if we were to also then experiment as we were going to market and really only talk about that 14 grams of protein and not give it a consistent, clear voice and story and really the brand, it does make it quite a bit harder to scale because you end up tapping out on people who are looking specifically for 14 grams of protein versus the more universal, I want a fun candy experience and I want to feel good about it.
Mm.
So really you're trying to create this brand love, and that's also a lot harder to copy, frankly, than formulation later down the line when your competitors will come in. So I think a lot of emerging brands, especially if you've got this really truly innovative product, sometimes get into this bubble of the product is just going to sell itself. And it might for a time, but you have to look to the future, especially if you're the marketer on one of those brands.
You know what? That I would say is one of the pitfalls that I see with emerging brands is that they think they have a great product, but they don't invest in that brand story until it's too late sometimes. And they kind of, I think it's almost like they kind of either run out of money or they don't want to put the investment in or they don't necessarily have that. But I do think that it's extremely important. And you'd be shocked at how many requests that we get of like, hey, our brand started off really well, but then now it's like failing. And then you're like, oh, you're gonna have to really fix it like this. And they're like, oh my gosh, are you serious? It's gonna cost X amount. It's like, yeah, like sorry, you should have done that at the very beginning. Which it sounds like Protein Candy had that jump start, which is fantastic. Like, what about established brands? So you have this established brand, you have this audience that loves it, you're selling it. What do you find is strategies or pitfalls or different insight of working with an established brand?
Yeah, I mean, I think on the flip side, established brands often make really the opposite mistake. They're kind of complacent at times, not always, and it is a good thing. And it's usually coming out of we have this really defined voice. We know what our consumers want. We know what got us this far, and they can cling to what's worked before and wait way too long to evolve, which I'm sure you've also seen with some clients. You don't want to disrupt yourself. It is a big risk, but oftentimes needs to happen. And again, the only way you know when that needs to happen is also by looking up from your desk and seeing what consumer trends are changing and how that is really going to affect your brand and being honest with yourself. Your brand is great. What you've done is great, and disrupting it doesn't make it any less so, but it makes it ready for the future. So reevaluation of the market, continuing to innovate, they're really essential every stage of growth, not just at launch.
Yeah, there's a fine balance between disrupting for the sake of disruption, which could really hurt a business and be very risky, versus waiting too long and being complacent. And I think that's where marketers earn the big bucks in experience is knowing when to do what. And because you can't go, if you're driving fast, you can't jerk the wheel too much or else you're going to crash. You can't make massive changes, but if you don't make any changes, you're going to continue to go in the wrong direction for a long time. So how do you, as a marketer, know the difference? Like what things do you look for, or what things do you maybe try or that you're kind of seeing so that you are staying relevant with, say, cold press, more of an established category. It's more of you've got lots of competitors in there. And now you're trying to figure out, should we disrupt? Should we not? Should we do this? Like what measures and what strategic components do you look at?
Well, I think really people say this a lot. If you're at a startup or an emerging brand, you're building the airplane while mid-flight. I think the reality is you're doing that everywhere, every single brand, every day. So you do need to look at what are the potential avenues this brand could take in the next quarter, in the next year, in the next 3 years, and be doing that consistent evaluation. You don't have to follow every thread just because you open up, one chapter of maybe I need to introduce adaptogens to my drink. Doesn't mean you have to keep going down that route, but a lot of people are too scared to even open up the book, especially if you're still a founder in your business, or if there is still a founder of the product in the business. It can be even harder to just peek open and see if it is worth going forward. But similarly to what we did with protein candy, where we did spend more time in planning than the execution of it, making sure that it's vetted out, that you know what the cost is going to be to the business, that you understand what you're going to need to do in order to make that risk worthwhile, and also accepting that there will be risk. Those are all, I think, essential. And the strategy ultimately on how you do that executionally is going to be different brand by brand.
Yeah, it's great advice. I do think that established brands, some of the low risk components could be like a brand extension where you have your brand say, now we're going to have Pulp and Press wellness shots, and you have these different extensions. Now we're going to have Pulp and Press adaptogens, and you can kind of carve it out where it doesn't necessarily affect your core if it doesn't work. But if it does take off, you can then, start to invest maybe more behind it and start to see where it goes. But maybe having that slight brand extension strategy in your portfolio could maybe help within some of that risk mitigation.
Certainly, LTOs can be great for that too, if that is feasible for a brand. Testing out LTOs can be a really great way to do that.
Yeah, man, I love LTOs. Operations hate them, but
Yep.
it's like, but I think consumers really like it too because it keeps interest. It's like, oh, they have this new, and then we can then promote that. We can create some noise in the market. That's innovation. Sales love it because they want to bring something new. Operations and logistics absolutely hate LTOs because of packaging timing and all this kind of. It creates like they would just love it if we had 3 SKUs that just sold like gangbusters and all, like that was it. But no, that's awesome. So let's switching gears to the actual people. So on your team, you've got marketers, you're a marketer yourself. What character traits do you think make for a really good CPG marketer today?
Yeah, the best marketers, I think, are equally curious, they're agile, collaborative. We've talked about all of these things already as well, actually, but really curious enough to dig into consumer behavior and find insights that other people might miss. Just go that extra step forward. Why is this happening? Not just this is happening, but why? And why is that? And constantly asking why, kind of the toddler mentality of of curiousness can really go a long way. Agile enough that you're moving, really quickly, and you're not missing out on those, again, micro pivots that you need to make. You have to be willing to do that. You have to be willing to be agile and potentially have things flipped on its head and not take that personally as well. And then really collaborative. So like we were talking about, being a member of a team as a marketer, I think it is important to own the brand and have this stewardship. But the biggest mistake you could make is thinking you're the only one running the brand. You're not. There's usually tens, maybe hundreds of people that also support getting that brand to market. And so between sales, operations, external partners as well, the consumer's experience is going to be impacted by all of them. I think the best marketers that I've ever worked with, they're so collaborative to the core that they have this understanding of what matters to their partners. They have understanding of what matters to their internal clients, so their sales team. And they're able to then communicate incredibly well, not just externally about their brand, but also internally, so that you create a ton of brand champions and you don't have to be the puppet master, literally trying to get the string to move on your own. You've got other people doing that for you, because if you want a successful brand, you can't do it all yourself. So you have to really be a great communicator on top of collaborative and think about others first oftentimes.
Yeah, no, that's great. Curious and collaborative, I think, are great character traits to look for. I think when you're interviewing, when you're looking at them, I think the table stakes of just being able to be diligent and strategic and smart. But those 2 elements, you can't train them very easily. So you kind of have to find those people and do that. So that's awesome. Okay, so if we looked in your cupboard today and we looked in your pantry, because I actually do this with my friends, I'm always like, hey, what are you buying? What would we find? Like, what kind of stuff are you personally in buying?
That's so funny. That is such a CPG marketer thing to do, huh?
Oh yeah,
I do
we
that as
pantry
well.
rummage, and I shame my family all the time if they're buying the wrong stuff. I'm always like, "What? Why did you buy that? You know,
Yep.
you got lazy, didn't you?" You know.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, my pantry has probably half a shelf of Kraft Dinner, of KD mac and cheese. I think just the nostalgia of it, quite frankly. There's a brand that I don't think I'll ever stop buying. Perhaps I should, but I like to
Love
think I
that.
balance it out with the better for you side of things. Other than that, my kind of go-to snacks that you'll find in my pantry, quite obviously protein candy. I mean,
Well, you have to,
I
obviously.
have,
Yeah,
and it looks beautiful. It's actually not in my pantry. It's right out on the the
on the
counter because I
counter.
think it looks great and I want to encourage myself to eat it. Um, Purposeful popcorn, I really love them. They're a Canadian brand.
They are, yeah.
They've got the best white cheddar that's not cheddar. They're vegan, but quite honestly, can't tell the difference. So
Oh,
absolutely love them, and then love that they're mission driven as well. But again, a great product. So um, that would be probably my number one go-to snack. Otherwise, you're going to find a lot of electrolytes because I'm training for a marathon. So I've got Noon and Scratched and just constantly trying brands for function.
now that category has exploded.
Absolutely.
Electrolytes, like I would say, liquid IV for me when I first started seeing that, I think they kind of really pioneered and really made that a lot more mainstream. There are some other brands and stuff, but now I'm seeing tons out there.
Yeah. So many options and really becoming much more mainstream. It's not just the runners that are going for it, right? You talk about a much broader market now, and so a lot of need for further innovation. I mean, I love the caffeine being added to so many of them. But then, yeah, people looking for the low sugar options, which,
Yeah.
yeah, it's very interesting.
Awesome. And what brands do you think are really killing it right now? If as a marketer, you can't say your own because we know protein candy is awesome and Pulp and Press, but at the brands that you just see and you're just like, ah, man, they're doing really good stuff. Like, who would those be in your mind?
I mean, this is maybe going to be a little bit of a marketer cliche, but I think for good reason. Liquid Death to me still continues to absolutely nail it. I mean, taking, the fact that they took a basic product of canned water and really turned it into something unexpected and ownable. That's fantastic. But then the way that they've continued to execute over now several years with the tone, the visuals, and frankly, the sheer volume of content that they put out is just incredible. So the discipline to stay on brand across every channel, every piece of content, even the products that they're deciding to launch, and the way they engage with their community still while scaling as much as they have. Um, I mean, there's a reason so many marketers, I think, would cite them. So
Oh,
they continue to be a bit of an obsession of mine.
they have been on the topic all the time. I use them in a presentation for a group as well because the vision behind and I think you said it, like the differentiation, the creativity, the volume of content, collaborations that they do to create PR buzz. Like even the latest one that the water keg for pregnant like women.
Yep.
Like, have you seen that commercial? Like,
Yep.
I'm like, they pushed the envelope in a way that big CPG nationals would be scared to death to do. And I think they were able to really say, this is what our brand is about. Here's what we're going to do. And like, I just remember if I was at P&G and I said, hey guys, we're going to do this kind of, they would just like throw me out of the conference room and stuff. But they've been able to do stuff that is absolutely crazy. And that's why we're talking about it. It's right. They know what is working today, and kudos to them. Now they've raised a lot of money to be able to do that. So I think for me, it's like they've got the budgets to be able to do it. But I'm like, man, that's fantastic. But utilizing those budgets in a way that's amazing. So yeah, oh yeah, they're doing great. Yeah, I love that. If you're an aspiring marketer, so we're going to have marketers that are listening right now that are just starting their career, they're getting into it. What would you recommend? What's some piece of advice that you would give to those who are earlier in their career?
Yeah, I think biggest piece of advice is to obsess over the consumer and their complete experience. I think a lot of marketers, especially thinking of young marketers, how many of us thought marketing was advertising? Because that's what we see, right? And we fall in love with brands because in part of the advertising, but there's so much invisible that goes on behind the scenes, especially now in even more of an omni-channel world. So looking at every single experience, not just when they pick up the product or when they see your ad. And you're not just launching products, right? Creating experiences that people are going to remember, right from the social side to shipping to retail to packaging. It all comes into play to be a really strong marketer. And you're not just building a brand as well, right? You're looking at that consumer experience and you're building out a innovation roadmap. Going back to liquid death, who would have thought a water keg was needed? Really, if
Right.
you didn't take a step back and look at, okay, how can we bring all these consumer experience pieces together? What worked so well about that was it wasn't just, oh, we're going to gift the women I don't know, a 2/6 of this canned water, which could have been just as fine. They went the extra mile to really make something special for them
Yeah.
of this absolutely ridiculous keg of water. But it does also involve the product and all the planning that has to go behind it. And you need also to then do that planning. You don't just come up with it. That lead time that we talked about earlier comes back into play there. There's just going to be a lot more planning and marketing than I think a lot of marketers starting out realize. A lot more planning than execution, and that's how it should be if you want to make something that's memorable and leaves a legacy.
That's cool. That's great advice. I love that. And just final question I always like to ask everyone is on impact. So, who has had the biggest impact in your marketing career, and what did you learn from them?
It is really hard to choose just one person that has had the biggest impact. I've been really lucky to work with dozens of incredible leaders. I think each of them honestly taught me so many different things. Thinking of my boss at when I started at Kin Community Canada at Chorus Entertainment, teaching me quite honestly what I think is probably the perfect project management model, which you might not think is critical for a marketer, but if you can cut down your execution time and get people on the same page much faster, that's just gone over so well and was so incredibly impactful and helpful. Navigating complex teams and then just watching so many of the leaders that I would work beside or for, leading with honesty and empathy with their teams, having kind of come up through startup ranks. I think there's a lot of really challenging moments and people have to be honest and vulnerable. I think of the CEO of Sampler, who I used to work with over there, and she really did lead with her heart on her sleeve and tried to be honest and empathetic to what folks on our team were going through, even if it was a hard time. And if you're a marketer, whether you're even an individual contributor, you're still working on a team. So being able to have that leadership and honesty and be able to build trust amongst the people who are going to really enable your success and the success of the brand is really important. So, yeah, so many great people. What a hard
Oh,
question.
yeah, it really is. But I love what you said. There's a practical teaching element at the very beginning. That project management when you're a young marketer, wow, that would be invaluable. And then there's also less about being taught than caught. That you're saying that you recognize how they behave, what they did, how they do it, and it's a good reminder for us as leaders that our team does look at what we do, how we conduct ourselves, how we talk. And I think it's a great reminder to be like, hey, how am I leading today? And how am I showing up for them? That's great. Awesome. Well, Morgan, thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're extremely busy, but wow, you provided so much insight, great content, great advice, and I can't wait to see the future success of Protein Candy. It's taking off. Now North American wide. Pulp and Press is an amazing cold press juice that I'm excited to see all the new things that are going to be happening there. So continue to do a great job. Thank you so much for being here with us.
Thank you. It was great being here.